reading and studying and trying to figure out how to connect the dots on this in this series that we're talking about science and the Bible. But as I've gotten older, I've discovered that I've become a lot more interested in science and a lot more interested in how the world works, where in my younger days, I was just kind of like, I don't care. Whatever, however the world happens is how the world happens, and we'll just go from there. But I've been really excited as I've gotten older to try to understand things. I've become more curious, and maybe you're that way as well. Maybe your mind works in a way where like, how does this world actually work? Like, what is going on in this world around us? And science is something that oftentimes many people in the church I've discovered have gotten to a place where we look at science and the Bible almost as enemies. And we think that they don't work together, but instead they're kind of rivals. You got science on one side, and you got Bible on the other side, or God or faith, or whatever you want to call it on the other side, church, religion. And they look at each other and they don't like each other. They get mad at one another and they think, well, you just don't have enough faith. Well, you just don't have enough proof. And you just go back and forth and back and forth. And it can be hard to explain the way that this world works from either end alone, from either end by itself. It's a complicated thing, this world that we live in. And there are things in the Bible that just cannot be explained scientifically. There are things in the Bible that cannot be proven necessarily with things that we have in our world today. And we look and we may read some stories in the Bible or some things that happen in the Bible, and we may say, there's no way. That's not physically possible. It isn't possible for Jesus to walk on water. That scientifically does not make sense. It isn't possible for Jesus to turn water into wine. It can't be done. There's something missing. It isn't possible for Jesus to feed over 5,000 people with a couple loaves of bread and some fish. It's just not possible to do that. Scientifically speaking, it's not. It absolutely is not. So because of that, because there are things in the Bible like that, we struggle. And we look at science and we look at the Bible and we say, this doesn't line up. It just doesn't make sense. We're missing something. The dots are not connecting, and we're struggling to make sense of it all. It can be a frustrating sort of a thing. And in the science community, it's common to look down on people who believe in God. They almost think, well, if you believe in a creator and a God of the universe, and that's just the way that you explain things, that's the easy way out. You don't really know. You're just telling me to believe in this. You're just telling me to trust in this. And I don't go by just by what other people tell me. I go by the facts. So there's a disconnect here. And it's difficult to explain the fact that there is a God or a creator because we don't have physical proof in front of us in the sense where we can take something and say, look, because of this, there's a God. Now, if you are a Christian like I am, then you would say things like, well, just look at the world around us. Look at a baby, look at a child, look at phenomenons in this world that happen and things that just can't be explained. And we would point to a creator. Other people would point to chance, luck, opportunity, evolution. And so it's hard because we're on opposite ends. How do we get to a place where we don't just look at the world around us and we are discrediting the work of God by happenstance or luck or just a chance, but instead we work together with the science community, church and science together, because this is what I believe. God is not scared of science, and we don't have to be either as Christians. As a matter of fact, science and the Bible agree in a lot of ways. And when you look closer, science it's not just an enemy of God, but instead it works coinciding with God, where it's cooperating with God, and it supports one another. So that's what we're going to try and talk about this month. And we're going to try to figure out, how do science and the Bible actually agree? How do they work together to reflect truth in this world? And try to make sense of this world around us. So throughout our series, our goal is to talk about how they actually agree on things. But a lot of what I'm going to talk about comes from this book. It's called Amazing Truths: How Science and the Bible Agree. So if you would like to do some more research on this, I would recommend that you pick up this book. It's a really, really, really good book, and it's not a hard read either. That's what I was worried about, but it's really not. It's really not too hard to read. It helps me to understand a lot. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about throughout this whole month comes from this. A lot of, because just so you, I already talked about how I'm not the smartest, right? So since you know that, what that means is the information that I'm going to give you does not come from me. I didn't come up with this on my own. All right, so just so you are aware of that. A lot of it comes from this book and some other resources that I've used. But it's a really good book, and it's by Dr. Michael Gein. Michael Gein is the former ABC News science editor and Harvard physics instructor. In other words, he knows what he's talking about. He's done his research. He's done his work. And in getting ready for this series, I asked a few people some questions. Like, what questions do you have when it comes to science and the Bible, science and God, or what questions do you have about this world? And I, obviously, as you would have guessed, I got a lot of different questions ranging from all different directions. Some such as, well, okay, ranging from the dinosaurs. What happened to the dinosaurs? Where did they go? How did that happen? What about cavemen? How about the flood? How about creation? What about the universe? How old is the earth? And more and more and more and more and more. So what I'm going to tell you is this. I'm not answering those questions, okay? Just so you know. My goal is to not stand up here and answer every curious question that you've had since the third grade. If we did that, then this series would never end. And I also don't know the answer to a lot of them. But I am going to talk about some other things. I am going to talk about how in this world, there is no way that you or I will ever find out the answer to every question that man or woman has. We will never find out every answer. It's impossible. We will never, ever, ever know everything. You could be the smartest person in the world. You could have every degree that there is known to mankind. You still would not know everything. It is impossible for us to know everything and to understand everything. So our goal is to help us better understand science and faith together. How do they reflect the way that this world started or came to be? So I want to start by looking at what King Solomon said in Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verses 14 through 17. It'll be up on the screen for you. But this was written by what a lot of people think is King Solomon. We don't know for sure, but most people think that it's King Solomon. King Solomon was the son of David, if you've heard of David. And Solomon was known as the wisest person to ever walk the earth outside of Jesus, because he asked God for wisdom, which, side note, this is what I'm preaching about, but if you want wisdom, Bible says all you need to do is ask. Just ask for it. God doesn't want to keep wisdom from us or keep wisdom from you. Instead, he wants you to know things. He wants you to have more wisdom in your life. So, that's what Solomon did. He was a successful yet flawed king. He had a lot of wisdom, but he was poor in lifestyle and poor in some choices that he made. Which, what that tells us is, just because you know things doesn't mean you live things. Just a side note. If you think that you're really, really smart, great. What do you do with it? If you don't live it, if you don't use it, it's useless. So that was Solomon's problem in a lot of ways. So, Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verses 14 through 17 says this. There is something else meaningless that occurs on earth. Righteous men who get what the wicked deserve, and wicked men who get what the righteous deserve. This too, I say, is meaningless. So this is the age-old question. Why do bad things happen to good people? And why do good things happen to bad people? You weren't the first to ask that. And neither was Solomon. A lot of people have asked that question. And it's a frustrating question. But he says, this too is meaningless. So, I commend the enjoyment of life, because nothing is better for a man under the sun than to eat and drink and be glad. Then joy will accompany him in his work all the days of the life God has given him under the sun. When I applied my mind to know wisdom and to observe man's labor on earth, his eyes not seeing sleep day or night, then I saw all that God has done. No one can comprehend what goes on under the sun. Despite all his efforts to search it out, man cannot discover its meaning. Even if a wise man claims he knows, he cannot really comprehend it. So if we're truly going to understand knowledge in this world, or if we're just going to try to understand this world at all, we have to start in one specific place. You will never, ever, ever have all the answers. Never. And if that frustrates you, I understand. That's a frustrating thing. We will never have all the answers. And you may hear that and already be frustrated because you want answers. You want to know things. You want to know why. Why? That's one of the first words that we learn as a kid. But why? But why do I have to do this? But why did this happen? But why do I have to go to sleep? But why do I have to eat healthy things? But why is this person mean? We will never have all the answers in this life. And if you're hoping that I'm going to answer all your questions in this series, then you will be extremely disappointed because that is not going to happen. And after reading that, you may say to yourself, see, this is the problem that I have with faith. This is my issue. I want answers, and you're telling me I'm not going to get answers. Maybe you grew up in the church and everyone just told you, just believe. Maybe you were so curious as a child and you kept asking questions of your parents or of your pastor or of your Sunday school teacher, whoever it is, of your teacher. He kept asking more and more questions. And at first they were answering them questions, and then eventually you asked a question that they didn't know the answer to, and they said, just believe, okay? God, the Bible says just to believe. So stop asking questions. And that's frustrating. I get that. That's a frustrating thing. And you may be sitting here right now saying, okay, this is about science in the Bible, and you're already telling me, well, just believe. That's not fair. I need more than that. I need to know more than that. I need to have a better understanding of that. And this is a huge struggle for many in regards to Christianity. In other words, you're looking for proof in this world. Prove to me that blank is true. Prove to me that God is the creator. Prove to me that Jesus was who he said he was. Prove to me that Jesus wants a relationship with me and is still alive today. Prove to me that Jesus was resurrected. Prove to me that you care about me. Prove it. That is a struggle. We say that to our friends all the time. Maybe you have a friend who exaggerates the truth. And you always say, okay, prove it. Until you prove it to me, I won't believe it. Until you show me, I'm not going to trust it. You've lied one too many times. And maybe for you, the church has lied to you one too many times. And if that's the case, I'm sorry. That shouldn't be the case. But instead, the church should be honest. The church should tell the truth. Shouldn't hide it. The church should be transparent. It shouldn't be a place where we keep things to ourselves. That's how corruption happens. So maybe you're here today and you're like, this is not good enough. I need more than this, because seeing is believing, right? If I can't see it, touch it, hear it, talk to it, listen to it, whatever it is, if I can't do that, then I don't believe it. Seeing is believing, right? Of course not. Of course that's not true. You know how it's not true? I know that we believe in things we haven't seen all the time. I've never been to the West Coast. I've never seen the Pacific Ocean. I believe it's true. I believe it's real. I've seen pictures, but I've never seen it for myself. But I believe that it's there. I believe that it's happened. I've never been to Tokyo, but I hear it's an awesome place. I've never seen gravity. Have you? But I believe it exists. I've never seen the Orioles win a World Series, but they tell me it happened. I don't know. I've never seen those things, but I believe them. There are things that you believe that you have never seen. And science exists because significant parts of reality are hidden from us. That's why science exists, because science is trying to find those hidden parts of reality and explain them, help us understand them a little bit better. Science is there to help us get a better understanding of the world around us. It doesn't mean that it's already achieved that. And science believes in things that we have never actually seen. that we've never actually experienced. And it even has a difficult time bringing those hidden things into light. That's a struggle with science. It's not just faith or religion or Christianity. Let's take gravity and general relativity, for example, okay? I'm going to try and sound smart for a second. According to general relativity, massive objects create large, bowl-shaped depressions in space-time. Okay, I don't want to give you, this is part of my struggle with this series, is there's so much information that I'm trying to get to you that I don't want to make it feel like a science class, but it's called Science in the Bible, so it's going to a little bit, okay? But it all has a point, it all has a purpose, okay? So general relativity means that there are large objects that create a depression in the universe. And when they are large enough, what that means is they attract things to them. That's where gravity comes in. That's why we are on this earth. That's why we are stuck to this earth. Because there's gravity. It's so big that we are attracted to this. And then there's something called the sun that the world revolves around, that the earth revolves around. And that is so big and so large that the earth is attracted to it. There's a depression in the universe, in the space-time around us. The more massive an object, the deeper the basin, the more powerful the gravity. You with me? Everyone follow me so far? So the earth is larger than us. That's why we are pulled to the earth. The sun is larger than the earth. That's why the earth is pulled to the sun. And then the center of our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, is larger than the sun. That's why the sun is attracted to the center of the Milky Way galaxy. That's why we have this solar system that we live in. So with that data, with that knowledge and that information, it would lead us to believe that the Milky Way galaxy then is attracted to a larger object that is then keeping it close to it or revolving around it, correct? That's what it would make us think. We're attracted to the earth is attracted to the sun is attracted to the center of our galaxy, and you would believe that the Milky Way galaxy is then attracted to other galaxies, maybe even a larger galaxy, because our solar system is drawn towards the center of the Milky Way galaxy, which is roughly 600 quadrillion miles across it. That's a 6 with 17 zeros behind it, of light years. A light year is how fast light would travel in a year. So it's a lot further than a mile, let's just say that. It's thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of miles, actually. So it's a large, large, large place that we live in. And next week, we're going to talk about the universe and creation and how we came to be and how this earth came to be. So it'll be really interesting next week. But you would think that all these other galaxies, because we're not the only galaxy. There's more than just the Milky Way galaxy, right? So we would think that all these other galaxies were attracted to another larger force, another larger mass object that creates a larger depression in space that would attract everything else to itself. But science has discovered recently that actually these galaxies are going further away from one another at a rapid rate. Instead, they're not actually coming closer. They're not actually staying in the same place. Actually, the Milky Way galaxy is going further away from other galaxies and other galaxies and other galaxies. And scientists were like, uh-oh, this doesn't make sense. How do we make sense of this? How do we understand this? We don't exactly know. So what then is the material agent that accelerates these galaxies to repel from one another? Science then discovered that there's something called dark energy. What dark energy is it is anti-gravity. It is a matter, it is something in space that we don't exactly know, but it's a repulsive force that pushes things away instead of attracting things to. So there's dark energy, and then there's also dark matter. Dark matter in space is a black hole, and that attracts things to it. So some things are attracted to dark matter. Some things are being pushed away by dark energy. Have I lost you yet? You with me? Still following? Okay, I got a lab coat on. So we're learning things today. Do you want to know how much dark energy comprises of the total universe that we know of right now? Basically, remember, dark energy is something that we don't know really what it is. We just know it's pushing things away. Dark energy comprises 68% of the universe that we know of today. Dark matter, black holes, comprise 27% of the universe that we know today. So what does that leave left? 5% that we know what it is. In other words, 95% of the universe, we've got no clue what it is. We don't know. Science doesn't know. Scientists don't have the answer. We don't know exactly what makes up this other stuff. We just call it dark energy and dark matter, and we have a little bit of knowledge on it, but really, we don't understand it at all. That means 5% of the universe is visible to us. That's it. 5%. So you don't really believe in things that you see, and neither does science. We all believe in things that we don't see. But science uses two things to help us understand things better. They're called data and logic. We take these two things. We collect data. We collect information. We learn about something. And then from that data, we comprise a logical conclusion because of the data that we've received. Sometimes the data is reliable, sometimes it's not. But we take whatever data we have, we learn about it, and then we jump to a logical conclusion based on that data. However, there is even a problem with logic. Logic is not perfect because the world is not logical. Do you know how I know that? Because innocent people are in prison for crimes that they didn't commit. Because you've been nice to somebody and they've stabbed you in the back. Because you work hard, but you don't always get the promotion. Because you put in the work and you still feel like you aren't getting the results. Logic would say, if I do X, Y, or Z, then this will happen. That's logic. If I do this, then this will happen. Logic would say, we see a dog named Fido that has 4 legs. And because Fido is a dog and Fido has 4 legs, we would say all dogs have 4 legs. But we know that's not true. There's a dog in my neighborhood that has 3 legs. It's still a dog. But if I only look at Fido and see that he has 4 legs, then I would think every dog has 4 legs. It's not true. Not every dog does. That's the problem with logic. We see A, we see B, and we come to the conclusion of C. So when we take certain data and we apply logic to it, and we learn about this data, and we see what has resulted in the past from the data that we have, and we come to a conclusion, we think, oh, we figured it out. When in reality, it's not always accurate. It's not always true. Are logic and data helpful? Absolutely. I'm not saying that they aren't important and that they aren't helpful. They help us to make sense of this world. But sometimes logic and data leave us short. Solomon understood that. And he says in Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 through 6, he talks about this a little bit. He talks about when logic and data fail, where do you go and what do you do? Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 through 6 says this: trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. So what this says is this: when you don't have all the answers, trust in intuition and faith. Intuition and faith. Some people look at faith as the enemy of reason. They couldn't be more wrong. Couldn't be more wrong. In order to learn something and to reason, faith is ultimately involved. Because intuition and faith pick up where logic and data left off. Logic and data get us to a certain place, and these are tools that help us understand some things, but faith and intuition are tools that allow us to understand things that are too complex and ordinary, that are too complex for ordinary reasoning. That's where faith and intuition takes us, because we've lived a certain way, we've experienced certain things. So ordinary reasoning, common sense, will lead us to come to certain conclusions. When those conclusions fall short, we need intuition and faith. So if there is a God, and we are attempting to understand who he is, if God exists, whether you believe in God or not, if God exists, let's just say he does for a second. If God exists, then that would mean that he is the most complex thing in this universe. Because that would mean that God created the universe. So God has to be more complex than the universe around us. So if we are trying to understand who God is, the most complex being in the universe, we need something more than logic and data. We need intuition and we need faith to help us understand this. The most complex thing to understand, logic alone will not cut it. We need to rely on the intuition that we have and then have faith in the fruits of that intuition. Let me break it down a little more. If God exists, that means he created the universe, but not just the universe, he also created you in his image. And in order to trust in him, that means that we have an intuition about where we've come from. I read a book to my daughter called Are You My Mother? Dr. Seuss book. You've probably heard of it. It's about this bird that is born, that is hatched, and his mom is gone getting food for him, but he doesn't know. And the bird is born, and the bird knows, I have a mother, but I don't know where that mother is. I don't know what that mother looks like. So the bird starts walking around, finds a dog, says, are you my mother? No. Finds a cow, says, are you my mother? No. Finds a crane, says, are you my mother? No. And eventually the crane puts the bird, spoiler alert, puts the bird back in the nest. And eventually, when his mom does return, he says, I know you are my mother. How? Intuition and faith. That's how. He was born, and he said, there's something more. You and I have that same intuition. You and I have that same curiosity to discover where we have come from. We have that. To think beyond ourselves, to look for a creator. We're going to talk about this at the end of the month, but do you know who doesn't do that? Animals, really. We have a want to discover more beyond what we see in front of us. And if you are frustrated because you aren't getting the answers to life, then it means that you are relying entirely on logic and data, and you aren't leaning into the intuition that you have and the faith that is needed to pursue that intuition, to learn more about that data, to then apply more logic, to then get more answers. See, we're going about it backwards. We're looking at the data first. And it's not helping us. We learn some things, we discover some things, but it's not giving us the answers to life that we were absolutely looking for. Logic and data led scientists to believe that the world was flat. Do you know that? There was a time when we thought the world was flat because we looked at the data around us and we saw the world around us and we thought eventually this has to end. Logically, it brought us to the conclusion that this world is flat. And that makes sense. If you didn't know it, if you never had a science class, if you never went to school, if you never learned anything, and you were just born in this world and you looked around, you would think there has to be an end to this, right? You don't think that it's round. No, because the data in front of us says that the world is flat. So logically, that means that the world is flat. However, intuition led, what's his name? I want to get his name right. Pythagoras, led Pythagoras to think beyond just what he saw. And he eventually looked at the moon, and he saw that the moon was round, and so he took that data and logically assumed that the earth was round. And we know today that we live on a globe, not a map. Unless you're a flat earther, and then we have other problems, and this series is not going to be good for you. But logic and data would believe that the earth is flat until we looked into it more. Scientists, logic and data actually led scientists to believe that fire contained an invisible substance called phlogiston. You ever heard of that? Because it's not real. But scientists used to believe that phlogiston was what fire fed off of. It was an invisible substance, and when that was gone, the fire would die out. But instead, we learned faith and intuition led Joseph Priestley to discover something called oxygen, which is the true composition of what keeps a fire going. But logic and data didn't lead scientists to believe that oxygen existed. Instead, they thought that there was a specific substance that was provided to feed fire, We know that that's not true today. But how do we learn it? Because Joseph Priestley had the intuition to look for something more and the faith to follow through with it, to find out more answers, to find out more. The point is this: sometimes we discover things because we can feel it, because we know that we know that we know that there's more than just what meets the eye, because we know that there is something more. Where logic and data fall short, Solomon says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Because my own understanding is not big enough to understand this world. Is yours? And since it's not, I have to look to something more. The intuition that leads me to, and the faith that helps me to pursue knowledge, to pursue a Savior. It's so hard when somebody asks you the question, well, how do you know that God is real? How do you know that God exists? And the truth behind it is, I know that He exists because of the experiences that I've had that you have not had. Your experiences are different than mine. But since we can't call on God and then Him to just shout down, hey, I'm real, since we can't do that, we need to rely on something else. We need to rely on more. And in order to do that, it's my experience and it's your experience. And to a person who doesn't believe that God exists, has not had that experience. It's so hard to explain. But according to the Bible, when we take a small step in faith, more is revealed by God. A small step in faith. We perceive ourselves, we perceive this world, and we perceive others in a radically new way when we trust God with a little bit. Just a little bit. And we take that one little step and we say, okay, God, I have a little bit of faith here. I'm going to trust in what you're saying. And when we do that, I'm telling you, He changes our perspective. And He reveals more and more and more. Sometimes we say we need to take a leap of faith, and sometimes that's true. But more likely than not, you need to just take a baby step. More likely than not, you need to just trust God with a little bit and watch Him work. Because I promise you, He will. That intuition in your life where you know there is more here. The question is, do you have the faith to follow through with it? To trust it? So will we have all the answers? Absolutely not. You never will. We never will. And you were never meant to either. That's a huge key. You were never meant to understand everything. But can we understand more? Absolutely. So your job and my job is to take one small step, because the Creator whose image you were formed in is working. And He's pursuing you. And He wants to change you and the world around you. You have the intuition. Now put your faith into it. So I'm going to invite the worship team up as we get ready to close. And maybe you've been struggling with questions. Maybe you've been hurt by things in this world. Maybe you're just confused by things that happen all around you, and you're like, I don't know where to go or what to do or how to understand this better. That's frustrating. It's very frustrating. But the good news is this: knowledge is available. Wisdom is available. God is pursuing you, and you can feel it. Trust in Him and lean not on your own understanding. Listen to that intuition. Pursue that faith. Take the data and come to a logical conclusion. Because God is not scared of your questions. He's not scared of what you think of. He wants to help you know more. Amen? Let's stand and let's sing.
overwhelmed by the weight of your sin. Jesus is calling. Have you come to the end of yourself? Do you thirst for a drink from the well? Jesus is calling. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Leave behind your regrets and mistakes. Come today, there's no reason to wait. Jesus is calling. Bring your sorrows and trade them for joy. From the ashes a new life is born. Jesus is calling. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. And oh, what a Savior! Isn't He wonderful? Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. So bow down before Him, for He is Lord of all. Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. And oh, what a Savior! Isn't He wonderful? Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. So bow down before Him, for He is Lord of all. Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. And oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ.
Jesus, we thank you for drawing us closer to you. We thank you that you are working to help us know you. We thank you that you created us, that you formed us, that you've known us before we were even born. God, we thank you for giving us a chance to understand you better. I pray that we trust in that intuition, that we trust in the ways that you are convicting us and working in our lives. God, thank you for giving us a chance to understand things more complex than ourselves, and for providing wisdom and knowledge. Help us to get to a place where we are okay not having all the answers, and that we are okay trusting in the creator of the universe. God, we thank you. We want to give you our entire selves, our entire beings. We lay at your feet. We lift up the holy name of Jesus Christ. And everybody said, amen. As you go today, will you stop by the compassion table, talk to Sandy, and see some children who we can help? We'll see you back next week as we continue our series. Thanks.
Summer air on a moonlit mountainside. When my mind was a prison, you gave me the keys to life. I cannot stop exclaiming, I cannot stop proclaiming. You are glorious, holy Jehovah divine. You are beautiful. Winter snow falling softly through the sky. And now I am living confident in Christ. I cannot stop exclaiming, I cannot stop proclaiming. You are glorious, holy Jehovah divine. You are beautiful, King of creation, arise. the grass with great array, then how much more is there in store? When I seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness, seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness. I will seek your kingdom, seek your righteousness, seek your kingdom.